It's called survival. I have an unrivaled capacity for self-destruction, but that being said, I can draw the phoenix from absolutely any fatality. I don't think there's a woman who can say that she has not experienced misogyny and patriarchy,
Absolutely,
right? There
absolutely
isn't a
right.
woman alive who can say that.
Correct.
I'm grateful for this audience that exists because they're wonderful. The people who follow me are amazing. I learn so much from them. They're really warm. They're more than 50% women. So it's a wonderful space, but it doesn't make it any easier to be in that public eye. There were young women telling me things like, "Ma'am, because of you, I booked my first international holiday.
Oh wow, so
Ma'am,
beautiful.
because
So
of you,
wholesome.
I decided to wear a bikini for the first time, But what we actually need right now are stories. We need fiction, we need magic, we need gentleness, we need example. And
We need love.
absolutely.
हेलो एवरीबॉडी, वेरी वेरी गुड मॉर्निंग टू ऑल ऑफ यू। सो आज हमारे बीच एक ऐसी शख्स हैं जो कि बहुत ही ज़्यादा मल्टी टैलेंटेड है। वो एक ऑथर है, वो एक जर्नलिस्ट रह चुकी है, वो एक मॉडल है, वो एक एंटरप्रेन्योर भी है एंड वो और भी बहुत कुछ है। प्लीज अलाउ मी टू वेलकम यू करुणा एजारा पारिक फ्रॉम द सिटी ऑफ जॉय, कोलकाता। She's a master storyteller and let's get ready to be transported into a world of dreams where dreams come alive and stories hold the power to tell the truth. So, hi Karuna, how have you been?
Hi, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
good.
I am very happy to be sitting next to you.
And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure. And we hope we'll have a very nice, candid chat, right?
Absolutely.
So, to start with, how are you dealing with this Calcutta weather?
That's an easy question, very badly. So I'm from Delhi,
Right.
and I grew up in Delhi, and my fate brought me to Calcutta or Kolkata, the city of joy, as you called it. And while I've taken to it wholeheartedly, and I love its architecture, I love
Right.
its food, I love the people, they're so warm, and I've, as I said, opened my heart to the city. But the one thing that really gets me is the humidity. I come from a bone dry city, and
Right.
that's one thing that I've just not adapted to yet. So, and this is our worst summer yet in the city.
Absolutely.
And I was just talking to a friend, and I said to them, it's crazy to think that this is probably the coolest summer of the rest of our lives.
Absolutely.
Because that's what we've done to
And
the
it's
planet.
very scary to think of that. I have not thought like
Absolutely.
that. Now you've made me think. ये
I'm
तो
sorry.
हाँ, अब मैं यही सोचूंगा इसके बारे में। तो you said कि आप दिल्ली से यहाँ आए, so कैसे आप आए दिल्ली से? Like what transpired that you from Delhi shifted here when people from here are shifting outside?
It's a very simple answer.
Wow.
I fell in love.
With the city?
Well, with the city and with a boy.
Oh, okay.
So a few years before that, I'd been coming to the city because I have a connection to the city
Right.
from before.
Right.
My family is somewhat from here.
Okay.
So I would visit the city and I made friends here.
Right.
And अचानक एक लड़का मिल गया and I fell in love with him, and I found my way back here many years later. So my parents were very surprised, because they spent time here in the 70s growing up.
Okay.
And when I said I'm shifting to Calcutta, they were shocked. They said, we have moved away from there so many years ago, and you're moving back there. How come? They said you've traveled the whole world,
Right.
and आखिर में you're going to Calcutta again. So yeah.
So as you just said, you've traveled the whole world. So you've been a journalist.
Yes.
So that has made you travel the whole world, I believe, right?
Yes. So I used to work with NDTV.
Okay.
And I used to host travel shows for them.
Oh, fantastic.
And it was something I hadn't planned for in my life.
Right.
These things just happen
Yeah,
sometimes.
absolutely.
You know how life is.
Yes.
So I was actually a print journalist.
Okay.
And around that time, I got a call to audition for a show that would take me across the world.
Right.
And I was between jobs and I decided to go for it.
Mm.
I thought it was going to be quite funny, the
Yeah.
whole thing, an
Yeah.
experience, if nothing else. And lo and behold, I actually got a call back saying, we would love for you to host this show. And within, I think, 2 weeks, I was sent to the Maldives.
Oh wow!
And
That was your first place.
that was my first location.
I'm envious already.
It was a job that when I walked into rooms and I told people what I do, I could feel hatred in the room. I could feel people
No, I
genuinely.
don't think I hate you. I really love you, and
Thank
we all
you.
love you. And
Thank you.
but first destination is Maldives.
First, let
तो
me
वहाँ
tell you the
काम किया
next
या
one.
घुमा? सच बोलना है.
नहीं,
No,
that
you're
was-
not part of NDTV anymore, so they can't sack you.
It was a really difficult job. So, I've written 2 books already, and I was wondering what's my next book going to be.
Right.
And I thought and thought and thought, and I finally realized the book I want to write, which is coming out now next year,
Right.
is a book chronicling that time. Because it was such a strange time. It was such an unique experience, let's say, right? And I'm actually writing a travelogue come memoir about that era of my life.
Okay.
And I was just going through all the locations, and it was Maldives, it was Japan, it was Israel, Fiji,
Wow.
really far
What a
flung,
list.
beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful places. And after that, I got into travel journalism in a very big way. I worked for Lonely Planet. So it was
wow.
a variety of things that took me around the world. But yes, I ended up in Calcutta.
So such a wide range of traveling. Has it really changed the way you think, or has that really influenced your now current journey as an author?
I think that's a good question. I truly feel that travel does open up your mind. And I just got back from traveling to a new country myself. I just visited Uzbekistan, and it was a sort of lifelong dream of mine to visit Uzbekistan because it's part of what the original Silk Road occupied, right? So
Yes.
Samarkand, Bukhara,
Yes.
the Mughal Empire came from Samarkand.
right.
Babur left Samarkand to
Right.
come to India and
Right.
form the Mughal Empire. So it's a very historically significant place, and I'd always wanted to visit there. And I finally managed to make this trip happen, and I was traveling after 3 or 4 years because, internationally, let's say, because
Yes.
there was COVID, life circumstances, a lot of things prevented me from traveling for the last few years. And I was reminded on this trip of the fact that seeing new parts of the world really expands your horizons. It expands your sense of the world. You realize that people are so similar wherever you go.
Absolutely.
It reduces your sense of hatred, of
Correct.
the idea of
Correct.
the other, that,
Absolutely.
people are different from us, or they're going to be strangers, or that's not true at all. You can find kinship in human beings from across the world. And I think traveling does that. The other thing that traveling does is it reminds you how small you are
Actually,
in the greater
yeah,
scheme of
absolutely.
things, right?
And in fact, as they say, that traveling is one of the only things that really make you rich.
Yes,
Yeah, so-
absolutely. Experiences,
Yes,
right? Collect
experiences.
experiences, not things.
Exactly.
And I do try and live by that more and more the older I grow. And I do think that it does reflect in my writing in some way. I don't always directly write about travel,
right.
but I am interested in geographies, and I am interested in people from different places. For example, my novel, it's about a Pakistani boy and an Indian girl
Right.
who meet in Wales in the UK. And, I always thought about that geography, that how come we as Indians can't meet our neighbors?
Right,
None of us ever meet a Pakistani person.
Absolutely.
And when I met a Pakistani person for the first time when I was 17 and I went to the UK, I was like, wow, ye to apna hi hai yaar. They're the same. It's such a wonderful experience, right? So I think travel also manages to dash away the lies that politics tell us.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we like I had I had traveled to Russia in 2018
Wow.
to watch the World Cup.
Wow.
So it was I think game between Japan and Poland, and so I was seated beside a Pakistani who now happens to be a very good friend of mine.
Fantastic.
So he stays in Karachi, and we do video chats. It's been a while. I've spoken to him. Sorry about that. But then we've planned to go on joint trips to say Dubai or Maldives.
Yeah.
So and when I met him, and that was my first direct encounter with a Pakistani, and as you said, ऐसा लगता है कि वो अपने ही हैं,
Yeah.
and the same, we speak the same language,
Same food.
even the same गाली, सब एक ही है. मतलब
कॉलेज में वही मेरा खाना बनाते थे. You know, it was actually my Pakistani friends. I would say to them that I don't want to cook, you cook. And the food tasted so good, you know,
Exactly.
it tasted like home.
And the average Indian and the average Pakistani, they want to meet. They want to exchange words. They want to exchange food. If you think of it, from Amritsar to Lahore is only about 30-40 kilometers, you know, yet you can't actually travel there.
Yeah, if you think of it, we were one country, so why would we be so different from each other?
And if the borders are opened, there would be no wars. And if there would be no wars, you know, what will happen. So it's all an agenda, what I feel. Otherwise, we're all the same. Now, since we're talking about politics, just a question, Dimag Maya. Do you support any particular political party, or are you apolitical, or?
Well, I don't support the politics of hate. Let's put it that way. I support the leader who's going to lead with love, and I support a leader who really appreciates India for the secular, magically diverse space that it is. I think in previous years we've seen a lot of polarization. We see that being used by political parties very well. And if you look at our economy, if you look at our happiness index, if you look at our economic policies, if you look at our environmental policies, you know, you don't see India as a country that's actually shining. But we seem to be constantly distracted by these politics of hate, and I think it suits a government very, very well.
It does.
To keep fanning that fire. I will say this, that I think, as someone who lives in this country, I think that it's important for us to not just question this political party that's in power currently, but all political parties in power. As citizens, we have elected these people, and we deserve to ask questions of them, and we deserve to have them answered. You know, so that's what I feel politically. I'm ready to support anyone who supports those ideals.
So if suppose in a hypothetical world, if you had to join a particular party, which one would you join?
Oh, I have always said that I would create a green dictatorship.
Okay, and what's that all about?
No, I mean, it's a joke, of course, half a joke. But I have seen that in India, we don't have a party that really puts environmental policies at the forefront,
totally
right? And there's a lot of people who turn around and say that अरे लोग खाना नहीं है, you know, like they need bori bistar first, you know, they need, and I'm like, yeah, I get that, but this planet really is on the brink.
I know,
and frankly, climate change is going to affect all these things, you know, whether you look at what the farmers are dealing with, whether you look at this heat that we're speaking about.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's going to affect us all. And
it has started to.
And I do think that when you put green policies at the forefront of governance, I do think you see magical things happen. And it is going to, eventually, it is going to create the kind of jobs we need as well. But there seems to be this reluctance to actually take that step. And I mean, there's a lot of oil and coal dependence still. But I personally feel that we should be able to fast forward to a point where we are actually utilizing green energy in a way that is going to be beneficial not just to the planet but to people as well. So yeah, I wish that we had that in India. I mean, you see certain countries internationally doing that, and I just wish that we had a little more of that in
Right.
India. Yeah.
Like speaking about environmental policies, even our policy that we have for our animals or for our strays,
Yes.
that's also pretty poor in our country.
Yes, it
You
is
know,
getting better. I will say that, and I think it's partly getting better because people have stood up against these
exactly. See,
things.
again,
So
it's
there
all down to the
is,
people. It's
yes,
all down to the individual, right?
yeah,
Like, for example, how many times do we see that people are eating something and they just throw it out of their car, or
yeah,
they're just dumping it on the beach, or somebody smoking a
yeah.
cigarette, and they're just rather than stubbing it and putting it inside the bin, they're just throwing it out on the road. So at the end of the day, it's all down to us individuals also to make these small changes, because
Yeah.
we all talk about a clean city or a clean environment, but if we don't do, we can't expect the ministers to come and always come and clean after we throw something. So
Yeah,
it has to be a joint goal towards achieving anything.
I agree. There's the personal and then there's the political level, there's
Absolutely.
policy change. I think what happens a lot of the time is that people like you and I on a smaller scale sometimes feel like, "Main kyun karu yaar?"
Hmm.
You know, like
Hmm.
the government's not doing anything, the place is anyway so dirty.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Mera
Right.
kya lena dena?
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's the
Right.
kind
Right.
of attitude I've seen. And I think people who care, even people who care very much,
Hmm.
I feel they're bogged down by the fact that we keep hearing about these huge environmental disasters taking place, whether it's forest fires in Canada, whether it's,
Yeah.
flooding in China, whether it's, but these are things almost too big for us to comprehend,
Correct.
I think.
Correct.
And it's very hard to make that activate something on a personal level. But the two things are linked. And so I feel like it needs to be both things. It needs to be us demanding better from our governments, and it needs to be people pushing that. It needs to be politicians who are that way inclined anyway. And it also needs to be on a much smaller scale, things like not taking a plastic bag when you go to the
Right.
shops.
Correct.
Every
Correct.
little
Yeah.
thing counts.
Every little
And
account. Yes.
I cannot stress that enough. And people often ask me, don't you lose hope? And there have been times where, I speak out about the environment so much.
Right.
And of course, there have been times where I say, what's the point? What am I mean, you look onto the street and you see plastic bags
All
strewn
over. All
everywhere, and you're
over.
like,
Yes. Yes.
the common person has so much to worry about. They don't know where their next meal is coming from very often. They're not going to care if it's wrapped in a plastic bag, and
Correct.
that's where policy should come
Correct.
in.
Correct.
But if you are in a position to make that change in whatever little way, I do think it's important to do it and to continue to do it. I mean, I saw an article yesterday that said we are beyond the point of saving uh, the Arctic ice. Like
Really?
we are beyond that. It's actually, we just crossed it. Scientists say that this week we finally crossed it. But what do you do? Do you stop trying? And I've often thought about whether I would have a child or not in this world. And my main question to myself is always, what planet are you, what future are you giving to this child? you know
Yeah. Speaking on that topic, is I think there's already very much need in this world. There's already so much. There are the orphanages are full.
yeah,
People people would want their own apna khoon
yeah,
rather than actually going and adopting somebody.
yeah,
And it's all down to the patriarchal system or the ego that works in, because
yes,
there is about only few percentage of people who really love children, so they
yeah,
want to have their child.
you're so right.
But at the end of the day, it's their ego which works, ki mera khoon, mera lineage
Yeah.
hoga. That's why I've decided I'm never having my child. So
Congratulations. I'm,
thank you.
I'm glad that it's such a clear choice for you. And
Yeah.
I actually wish that I had such a clear answer in front of me, because I often think about
Right,
it.
right.
But these are the things that have held me back. I've
Yeah.
felt, what kind of world are we
Exactly.
bringing a child into,
Absolutely.
and do we really need more people on this planet?
Absolutely.
It's a
We are, I
human
think,
who's
about
going to take
six and
up.
a half billion people in
Yep,
this world,
yep.
and
We
the
have a population crisis right now.
absolutely. India is the most populated country in the world. It has overtaken China, and
So
I
disturbing.
think right now is the need of population control. But again, here the government wouldn't do that, because if they do that, they'll face severe backlash from all sects of the society. and then their vote will
Yeah.
come down. So sometimes, I feel that actually the China government is right.
So that's why I said a green dictatorship.
Exactly.
And though I don't actually agree with dictatorships anywhere, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
democracy and all its flawed beauty is still possibly the best way forward. But sometimes you look around and you think, wow, we could use a few rules, right?
Right. There's for the people who are not as privileged as us, who lack the basic knowledge, they are not being educated enough regarding birth control and all of that. People who are
Absolutely.
educated, as I said, it's the ego factor which kicks in कि मेरे को
Yeah.
मेरा बच्चा चाहिए, इसीलिए
Yeah.
वो लोग बच्चा करते हैं.
Yeah, and I
बच्चे के
also,
प्यार के लिए कितना बच्चा करते हैं वो उनसे जाके पूछना चाहिए, क्योंकि अदरवाइज ऑर्फनेजेस इतना फुल रहते नहीं.
yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
these
and
are,
it's also complicated because I've heard many wealthy people say, "Oh, poor people shouldn't be having so many children."
exactly.
And I don't understand how they feel so. And this is people with 2, 3 kids themselves say, "Oh, inke paas paisa nahi hai, they should not be having children." Why? Why is their child less valuable than yours
Right.
because you have money?
Right.
So it's a more difficult life for them for sure, but I'm sure the exact same things are driving their desire to have a child as a wealthy person's, right? So I don't agree with that either. So it needs to be the same rules for everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. So coming to the money thing,
Yeah.
very light question. If money would not have been an option, what would you do?
Wow. I think I would love to have been a full-time writer because that's
Okay.
actually my true passion. And the truth is that it's very rare for a writer to be able to survive on just writing their books. That is a complete fantasy, and I think it's very few writers in this world who actually manage to live off their books. It doesn't happen. So
Does Chetan
most
Bhagat manage to live off his books?
You'll have to ask Chetan that. I don't know. I wonder, but I do know he does other things. I know that he writes newspaper columns. He's
Yes,
worked as a
yes.
business
He
consultant.
sold some of his films.
Exactly. So it's very, very difficult to actually do that, and that's the fantasy that I love. I would love to be able to live somewhere tucked away in the hills and just write. Write for the love of writing. Write without fear that this is not going to be a bestseller or a hit or
Right,
make money.
right.
And I think that if money is not a question, you tend to feel a bit more fearless in this world, right? Um, yeah. I also have this other career, which is social media related, where I do what I call accidental influencer work. I
Right.
never aimed to be an influencer. I never aimed to sort of work in this space as a content creator, but it happened. And I decided to, like with so many other things in my life, just embrace, what's coming my way. And so I've fallen into this space of working with social media, but I'm not sure how much I enjoy it, and I'm not sure how healthy it is because social media दिमाग खराब कर देता है after some time.
बहुत
You
ज़्यादा।
just like you're constantly in the public eye, and I think
And some way or the other, you have to prove yourself.
you're constantly performing.
The pressure of creating new content
You know
every
it,
day.
yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
sometimes can really drive you crazy.
Totally. It's so unhealthy, and I wonder very much how the next generation is going to deal with this coming up, growing up with it already as a part of their lives. We adapted to it, but there's a whole generation that has never known anything else. A lot of them
Yes.
a lot of them from the moment they are
Yes.
born, their parents have pictures of them on social media,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I don't know what that kind of exposure to a public eye is going to do to the next generation. And I know that I struggle with it a lot. And it's one of the things I cannot cut out of my life simply because it's become a revenue stream for me as
Absolutely.
well.
And we need money to survive. We
Yes.
have to be honest.
Yes, and even with my books. So my first book and my second book, which is right here,
Right.
both of them came out during the pandemic, in back-to-back years,
Right.
2020 and 2021. And I have to be honest that if it wasn't for social media, I would have had no way of promoting these books, and so I'm very grateful for it as well. But it has its limitations, and I
Absolutely.
think we need to draw our own
Yeah,
boundaries
and I think
around those
every
limitations.
field has its pros and cons.
Yes.
Every sector has its own gains and
Hmm.
losses. But I think it's very important to, actually, as you said, draw the line, maintain those boundaries. Really detach after one point of time. And if you have the power to actually detach from what you're doing, so say a day when you decide I'm not even going to look at it, I'm just going to be myself. I think it'll be quite healthy that way.
Yeah.
But if at the back of the mind you have, अच्छा इसमें कितने likes आए हैं, ये इस पे कर रहा है कि नहीं, अगला मैं क्या content बनाऊंगा, constant जब सोचते रहोगे ना, तो फिर एक saturation point आ जाता है, and उस समय फिर अच्छा content भी नहीं बनेगा. So to really make good content, I think it's very important for all the influencers, all the content creators, for us to really take that break, because
Yeah.
to give your mind some space to
I
think again
agree. I really agree. And it's a conversation you have to keep having with
with yourself.
yourself.
Absolutely,
And I
yes.
do detach. I have a private Instagram account with only my closest friends and my family members on it,
Right.
so that I can post whatever nonsense I want over there, things that I post just for myself. I can chat with my family over there without this constant
Yeah,
notifications.
yeah.
And I'm grateful for this audience that exists because they're wonderful. The people who follow me are amazing. I learn so much from them. They're really warm. They're more than 50% women. So it's a wonderful space, but it doesn't make it any easier to be in that public eye, right? And I think the detachment that you spoke of is so important for your mental health. And I do that from time to time. I just switch off from it, and luckily I have my writing, so that's
Right,
always the
right.
best
Yes,
escape.
yes,
i,
yes,
I
yes,
drown myself in
yes.
my creative process.
I had one of my questions, which I think you've already kind of answered. That in your field of writing, what is the one myth that you really want to debunk? I think which you've kind of answered. If there's anything else,
Yes, I also want to debunk this theory that I meet people sometimes and I'm talking about my book, or I say that I'm a writer, I wrote a book, and I often get this response कि मैं भी लिख रहा हूँ यार,
अच्छा.
मेरी भी किताब आएगी, and I'm like अच्छा लिख के दिखाओ, and it's incredible to me that people are so comfortable and confident. I took 10 years to write my first book. 10 years. Do you know how hard it is? It's grueling work. I think there's this Hemingway quote where he said, "There's nothing to writing. You just sit down at a typewriter and bleed." And that's what it is. It is blood, sweat, and tears. It is exhausting work. You have no social life while you're doing it.
Right.
You question everything about yourself. Every single word you put out there is going to be judged. Books also just don't sell very often. I mean, I'm one of the lucky few whose book got really famous. I have friends who have written books that are far better than my book, and they've sold 400-500 copies. That's it. And uske baad, it's back to the drawing board. You make so little selling a book. There's no money. It is a thankless job in so many ways. And people say it with so much confidence कि मैं भी लिख रहा हूँ. I'm like, okay, buddy, that's so good for you. But I don't think that's true. And I think that writers need to maybe be given that respect, or more than that, I think people need to realize that it is a very, very difficult task.
Absolutely.
And anyone who actually sits down to write a book, I think will realize pretty quickly that it's not easy to do. And it's horrible work, and only if you love it deeply do I recommend it.
So as you're saying, do you think that book or books in general, or writing a book, is can it be considered a dying art, or not really?
As I said too, it seems everyone is writing one. So whoever I talk to, I don't know if writing is a dying art. I think there will always be a human connection to storytelling. I think,
Yes, obviously.
yeah, it's
Yes.
one of the things that I've often heard writers say this, that it's one of the things that differentiates us from every other species, that
Correct.
we tell our stories.
Correct.
And that's something so precious, and I think it's innately human to do that.
Right.
So I don't think writing is ever going to really go out of style. I was worried for a while that reading certainly is going out of style. There's a tendency in India right now to read and to buy a lot of non-fiction books. And I
Right,
think it's
right.
because I blame it a bit on Twitter. I don't know how else to say this, but
Yeah.
everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to know, everyone wants to give an opinion, everyone wants to uh, be more knowledgeable, throw facts
Mm,
at you.
mm,
But what we actually need right now are stories. We need fiction. We need magic. We need
mm.
gentleness. We need example.
We
And
need love.
absolutely. And I think it's so important to continue reading fiction. I actually, about a month ago, I started a book club, and it's called Karuna's Kitab Club. And I started this with the sole intention of promoting fiction books that otherwise would slip away maybe in India. And I want so much for people to experience the joy of sinking into a story and letting it transform you. And I am such a believer in the power of that. And though I'm writing nonfiction right now, and I'll never say, nonfiction doesn't have its place, but I just think we need to put emphasis on reading. We have too many people who think they know everything. And I think there's so much value in sitting
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and saying, I don't know, teach me, I want to learn.
Right.
And books are the best thing for that.
So while you've been moving your careers from a journalist to, I think you've also been a model,
Yes.
to an author, to an influencer.
Yeah.
Has there been any transformative experiences which has really helped you while you're on your professional journey?
Gosh, there's been so many of them. I think
Maybe one or two most
yeah.
intriguing experiences.
Well, I was thinking yesterday actually of my boss at NDTV.
Hmm.
And I think more than experiences, one of the great joys of having done so many different
Right,
things
right.
is being exposed to so many different kinds of people.
People, right.
And I've worked for some really bad bosses,
Hmm.
and I've had some really, really good bosses. And I was thinking yesterday about my boss at NDTV, and he was a wonderful man. And I recently met him after 10 years or something, and we just had a coffee together. And so I was reminiscing about all our time traveling together and all the time I worked under him at
Right,
NDTV.
right.
And I remember this incident. We were in Spain, and we'd been there for 2 weeks, and it was a very, very difficult trip. It
Okay.
was a difficult trip because we were shooting 18 to 20 hours a day. I'm not kidding. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, and that's it. We were shooting non-stop. It was exhausting. We were on a tight budget. It wasn't a luxury trip at all. And I remember as a team, we were really whiny. We were really, uh, you know, nakre pe nakre. It was like, imagine there was like one person is complaining, the next person is saying, no, no, but my situation is worse. The camera person is saying, no, mine is the worst. It went on and on like that. And our boss, he stayed calm throughout this 2 weeks. And on the last day, we had changed our ticket and we got to the airport early. We wanted to leave like 2, 3 days before planned. And the Barcelona airport shuts down at night,
Oh, really?
or
Okay.
it used to at that time.
Acha.
And we're told the airport is shutting down. And we said, Hamara kya hoga? Do we leave the airport? Do we? They said, nahi, nahi, band kar lenge. Idhar hi so jao aap. So we were really baffled. All the lights are off at the airport. We thought, what do we do? There's no food, there's no water. And we were saying, ki, so let's take a hotel, and we just thought, like, we want luxury, we want something better.
Right.
He said, koi nahi yaar, idhar hi so jate. He took his backpack, he put it on the floor, he just laid down. And this man is one of the most senior people at NDTV. He laid down on the cold floor and he just said, come on yaar, it's only a few hours. Why are you complaining? You're all young. And he just went to sleep there, and he told us jokes, he told us stories. We chilled out, and like a few hours later, the time had passed. And I thought about it, and I thought, what a great example of good leadership. As
Right,
I
right.
like move into my 40s, I'm just so impressed by people who can lead that way. And yeah, it was just such a pleasure to be exposed to that kind of thing at a young age. And I got to meet many, many people like that who taught me there's always a different way to approach a situation. And I think that's been very valuable to me.
Has anybody? I'm sure many people have. What has been the more best DM that you've received? One best DM and one worst DM that you've received.
Oh God,
Really mean
worst
and
ones.
really beautiful.
I mean, I've got, in terms of worst, it's pretty dark. Anytime I post anything political, I get 100 messages saying go to Pakistan. I've got rape threats. I've got my fair share of dick pics. I've got, it's been a terrible sort of assault of horrible messages. Uh, I've got messages about my looks, telling me how hideous I am, how ugly, how untalented, how stupid. I mean, you just have to take it with a pinch of salt and know that you're clearly ruffling feathers, right? And on a good day, that's what you tell yourself. And some of the best messages I've ever received were, and this is going to be in my next book as well. Uh, but when I started hosting these travel shows, and all these men used to message me saying all these bizarre things, I started finding underneath all those messages, and as I went through my inbox, I started finding messages from women from all over the country. And I'm talking from really, really small towns across India. And they were just so wonderful because they were young women telling me things like, ma'am, because of you, I booked my first international holiday.
Oh wow, so
Ma'am,
beautiful,
because
so
of you,
wholesome.
I decided to wear a bikini for the first time. And they were so empowered and they were so genuine. And so many of these women didn't even have their own phones or computers. One girl was like, मैं अपने भाई के फोन से मैसेज भेज रही हूँ मैम but I just wanted to tell you that I love you, and I just thought that's so sweet and it was so moving. And those messages always stay with me. And when I would ask myself, why am I doing this? Why am I putting on a swimsuit and traveling the world and talking to a camera? I was like, I'm doing it for the women. That's why I'm doing this, so that maybe there's a little girl in a tiny town in India out there somewhere who watches me on her brother's phone and says, "मैं भी करूँगी," and one day I'm going to do that, and one day I'm going to be there, and that's enough, right?
So coming to very sensitive part, talking about women. So women in India, um, so even right from the time they grow up, suppose they have a brother,
Yeah.
elder brother or younger brother, for example, things like कि भाई तो बाहर चला गया मैदान में खेलने बट तुम टेरेस में जाके खेलो.
Yeah.
ऐसे बहुत सारी चीजें हुई हैं भाई, होती रहती हैं, आज भी हो रही हैं, ठीक है. सो हैज एनीथिंग लाइक दिस एवर हैपेंड विथ यू? And second part to that is, we are in 2023, yet there's a huge divide between men and women. People in the rural areas, the divide is more. It's there in the urban as well,
Yeah.
without generalizing anything. What, like, how do we actually counter this? Because this is a huge menace to our society, and it's still happening, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So has it happened with you, and how do we counter this?
I don't think there's a woman who can say that she has not experienced misogyny and patriarchy, right?
Absolutely,
There isn't
absolutely
a
right.
woman alive who can say that.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I'm no exception. As recently as August last year, I was traveling. I was in Fort Kochi, which is it's a pretty cute, fancy tourist area.
Absolutely, yes.
And I was staying at a lovely property, and but I was alone. And one night, someone tried to enter my room. A man. I was alone. Luckily I had locked the door, and I have to ask myself what would have happened if that door hadn't been locked. And I think that's a question we ask ourselves and then we put away in a box because we don't want to face the answer. Because if we face that answer, I think we'll stop going about our lives the way we do. We'll stop living life altogether. And that's exactly what patriarchy wants, right? A sense of patriarchy wants that women stay home, that women abide by the rules. And I think all we can do is continue to break them. And of course, it's a problem. You're absolutely right. It continues to be a problem. It is a problem that is so prevalent in urban centers as well, but is disguised so gracefully,
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't just because you can, I don't know, wear a certain kind of dress out, or I mean, something small like that, it doesn't mean that patriarchy no longer exists.
But
And
it
these things are
very
held
much
up to
does.
us as morsels.
Yeah.
That, oh, but you can dress like this, you can do that. You didn't change your last name when you got married. I mean, that doesn't mean that patriarchy ends here, right? There's so much work left to be done, and all I can say is that we keep doing it. But I will say this, that I think what's really important is the economics of it. And I tell all women who ask me this, I'm like, get a job. Get
Exactly.
a
Start
job.
earning.
Yes.
Exactly.
Start earning.
Yeah.
Take your education seriously enough, or your passion, if not your education, your passion seriously enough to get a job and make your own money. Because when you
Absolutely.
earn your own money,
Absolutely.
no one can tell you what to do.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think the more of us who do that as women, the more examples are set, and the more we change what is the norm, right? And I
Absolutely.
don't think, I mean, it's not going to happen very quickly, right?
Obviously,
It's
and-
going to take years. It's going to never stop being a problem,
And
maybe
without
in my lifetime.
offending
but
any women, but I think women also have a huge role to support patriarchy. I have seen that.
Of course, of course.
I have seen that, and
Yes.
it's really sad.
Yes.
That
And
women, being women, are actually
completely.
supporting patriarchy.
Yeah,
So,
and the sad thing is their support of the patriarchy is patriarchy.
That's
And they don't
right.
realize that.
They don't realize that, yes.
So hopefully we will keep seeing change.
Yeah, this is a battle which
Yeah.
has to end
Yeah.
on the other side.
Yeah, and I mean, the funny thing is that a healthy, working, economically better society is one where women are part of it as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we are part of the workforce, it's not going to take away anything.
Not
It's
at all.
actually going to be a richer, happier nation and world.
Yeah, and
So, yeah.
obviously, like, the expenses are increasing every day. Inflation is increasing every day. So if there's an extra earning member in the family, it's just be better rather than anything not so better.
Yeah.
Rather, it's always two is always better than one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And hopefully we also reach a place where women don't have to have a family. That's the other
That's
thing.
even better.
Where a woman can just live her life for herself.
The
and
way
that's
she wants
fine.
to.
Yeah. And, I think even marriage though I'm very happily married, I tell everyone, do you really need to get married?
Exactly.
Ask yourself. It's such a ridiculous institution that we cling to. For what? So unless you truly feel that it's bringing something to your life, I don't understand why people are so desperate to get married and have babies.
Exactly.
Live your life.
Exactly, like the way I was talking to you about the babies part. That
Yeah.
genuinely, do you want to have a baby?
Exactly.
Similarly, people, do you genuinely want to get married? Then you should get married.
Yeah.
Not because I've heard such stupid things. ये stupid नहीं है तो society मम्मी पापा कह रहे, that's to the most stupid thing I've heard.
Yes.
Second, मेरे को उसके साथ रहना है तो शादी कर रहा हूँ. मतलब ये मैं रहना है तो शादी क्यों करना है? You can just go and stay with that person.
I think there's a heavy sense of shame that people feel.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I rid myself of that sense of shame quite early on, and I still feel it, of course. You are made to feel it.
Yeah.
It's very hard
I
to
know,
escape
I know.
it.
Yeah.
But I think just small things like all this ink. It's more normal now. But when I first got these tattoos, people would actually stop me in the streets to say, "Ye kyun kiya?"
It's a random strangers.
Strangers.
Achha.
You would have been so beautiful
They
if
feel
you
so
hadn't
entitled.
done this.
Yeah. उनको ये हक है ऐसे पूछे.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. So I think just living life by your own terms and what makes you happy without a sense of shame, there's great dignity in that.
See, you've got one life. I don't know if there are 7 lives. I don't know if there's an afterlife. We know there's one life.
Yeah.
So it's life ka, make the most of it and do whatever
Absolutely.
the dash you want to do.
Yeah.
Take it. Just do it. Just go for it. You should not think so much before doing it.
Totally. I agree completely. And I think I say that twice over for women.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Coming to your tattoos, इसका मतलब क्या है? Or is it just plain art? Because कभी-कभी art का कोई मतलब नहीं है.
So if I had one small tattoo, I
Huh.
could probably tell you
Tell you
what
the
it
meaning
meant.
of it, yeah.
But at this point, it's an amalgamation of everything I love and everything I wanted represented on my body, that made me feel more comfortable in my
Yeah,
skin.
and I think it's making your hand look beautiful. So,
Thank you.
so any author, your favorite authors, just say you've been really inspired.
My favorite authors. I have such a long list of authors I love. I most,
Top 3.
it's not possible because I think when you read the amount I do, which is a lot, I think what happens is that you're covering so many genres. So you would probably have to ask me, what are your top 3 political non-fiction books? What are your top
segment-wise.
3 magic realism books?
Yeah.
What are your top 3 memoirs? It's very, very difficult. But I can tell you what I'm reading right now. I'm reading a book by Sheena Patel called I'm a Fan, and I've selected it for my Kitab Club this month as well. And it's a really, really interesting, very dark, very twisted
Right.
novel. And it just won a British Book Award, so it's quite fantastic. I'm reading, this is amazing, right? I'm reading Paul Theroux's Great Indian Railway Bazaar. So he traveled, the Great Railway Bazaar, sorry, he traveled from London, I think, all the way to China on the railways back in the 1970s, and he chronicled this. And it's a very, very famous book, of course, but I'm reading it as research for my novel. And it's quite interesting because he goes through Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, but in the 70s. And his observations of these countries are, sometimes quite racist, but very, very interesting. And it's a window to a time. He's often traveling with a lot of hippies on the trains who are making their way from London to India. And in some ways, it's a more charming time, racism aside. So I'm reading that as well. And I just started reading the Baburnama because I was in Uzbekistan, like I said,
yeah.
and I was very curious to hear about Babur's journey to India and the start of the Mughal Empire. And it's wonderful because, you don't expect a Mughal emperor to be writing in such a personal manner, but he really writes in a very open manner about his drunken escapades, about his travels, about missing home, Samarkand, about the fruits that he wishes he could eat. And it's like reading his dear diary. So it's really special.
कुछ वहाँ से कुछ अगर याद होगा तो बोलो ना. Because सुन के बहुत ही exciting लग रहा है.
I'll tell you, I'm at the beginning, so I'll tell you one very interesting thing. He was in love with the fruits from Uzbekistan, from that area. It's called the Fergana Valley.
Okay.
And it has some of the most wonderful fruits you can imagine. When I was in Uzbekistan and walking through the streets, sometimes on the streets I would just see hundreds of cherries. And I was like, ye kya ho raha hai? And then you look up and there's just cherry trees and they're just dropping from there. And there's apricots on the floor, there's apples, that's how the fruit is over there. It's abundant. And when he came to India, he missed that fruit so much. The first 3-4 pages of the Baburnama are just him reminiscing about the fruits. And there's a rumor that is actually how melons and watermelon and grape came to India, because he called for it. And so the seeds were brought, and that's how those fruits came to India. So, coming back to what we were talking about politically, it's very interesting because who we frame as a conqueror and who we frame as an invader is very interesting. And what this invader brought and what they set up, maybe we need to look at that legacy as well. I mean, to think we wouldn't have watermelons, So
yeah. So okay, so for our viewers, so for example, somebody is a non-reader. If they want to pick up a romantic novel, which one should they?
I don't read that many romantic novels, which is surprising because everyone says that my book is very
Exactly,
romantic.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they can read my book. There, The Heart Asks Pleasure First. Read my book. My publishers always tell me I don't do this enough. They're like, you should plug your work, and I'm always
Absolutely, you
talking about
should.
other writers'
You
work.
should.
But
You should.
yeah, but they could read my book.
Yeah.
I read a very beautiful novel that influenced my work greatly many years ago. It's called Maps for Lost Lovers. It's by a Pakistani writer called Nadeem Aslam, and it's a very, very sad book. It's a very, very heavy book, but it influenced the way I thought about writing and method a lot, and I can recommend that.
One book for somebody who's looking for some motivation in their lives.
Wow. Okay. I did this crazy thing last year. I quit drinking
Okay.
and I went completely sober,
Okay.
which is, it shocked my friends. They said, why? And I said, I want to try it. So I recently drank again and I do enjoy a drink on special occasions.
Right.
But I decided to see how I would react in terms of mental health, in terms of my physical health, in terms of my brain performance. And I, at the time, read this book called Quit Like a Woman. And it just blew my mind because it's very inspiring in terms of sobriety, but it's also just inspiring to see what the brain does when challenged. And it's a lot to do with dopamine and the prefrontal cortex, and how we respond to addictions and how we change our patterns. And it just blew my mind. And it's not written in the language of like an inspo book. It's very, very funny. And the woman who wrote it, Holly Whitaker, she's hilarious. And so I would recommend Quit Like a Woman.
Great.
Yeah.
So when you're not working, okay, writing is your love, but when you're not working and you're not writing, what is the thing that you love to do? How do you indulge in self-care?
I'm reading a lot of the time. I know this sounds really cute maybe and lame, but I actually just love hanging out with my dog. I just love hanging out with my dog. He's a really cool person. I don't know how else to put it.
I think
He's
you put it
really
the best way
intelligent.
possible,
He's super intelligent. He's very empathetic. He's really chilled out. He's non-hectic, and I love hanging out with my dog. And I'm also very lucky to be in a very sort of functioning and happy marriage after many bad and failed relationships. And I know how hard that is to find. And I think one of the things that makes a good marriage is putting in the time and never compromising on the friendship over there. And so I actually really enjoyed that. And separately, one of the other things that I think makes a really good marriage, at least for a woman, is never letting go of your female friendships. So when I'm not spending time with the two men in my life, which are my husband and my dog, I'm spending time with my female friends, and there's nothing that actually nourishes my soul more. Even if it's just a quick brunch or a walk in the park, I love to spend time in nature, so we often combine those things. But I cannot stress that enough. And I see too many women give up those friendships when they get married, and you don't have to do that. One of the things that makes my marriage good is having this very rich world of women as well. So
Fantastic. One last, not a question, but a last word for all the budding authors and the budding entrepreneurs, and for everybody who aspires to live life in their own terms, but somehow falls short in doing so.
I want to say that it never gets less scary. I've been doing this for years now, and I mean, yeah, it's like 20, 23 years that I've been doing this, and it still doesn't feel like a fearless escapade. Life still feels burdened by insecurities. I have really bad weeks where my mental health is terrible. I judge myself. I stall on projects. I snap. But I think the point is always going back to it and always doing it. And I think so many of us put our dreams on hold
Right.
because we think it's never going to be good enough. but you're never going to know if you never try, right?
Absolutely.
So I think the important thing is to quiet that inner voice of doubt, or if you can't quiet it, shove it to the corner for 1 second and just start and just stick to it and come back to it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Karuna.
you.
I
This
think
was really wonderful.
it was wonderful, and if you could write a small message for this, and after that, I would also ask you to do one small thing. But before
All right.
that, one message for the entire team of Twisted Truths.
There you go.
Could you read it out to the camera there?
I mean, it's just 2 words.
It's okay.
It just says, live fearless.
Oh, fantastic! I think that's how we all should aspire to live. So before you go, I would request you if you could read out one of your favorite poems. I know it's
Gosh.
difficult to choose, but
All right.
from your book.
So I carried my book of poems, Where Stories Gather, with me today, hoping that you would ask me this question. I am going to just read a short one.
Yeah.
And, because we just spoke about mental health and about doing the work,
Right.
I'm going to read something along those lines. I can't say if it's a favorite poem because, like a mother with her children,
Exactly.
I don't think I can
Yeah,
choose.
yeah.
But this is a poem called Bone Work. It goes like this. Do the bone work. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Will this break me? Or is that creak just the sound of my skeleton stretching to make room for my soul swelling?
Wow, fantastic! Can we have one more, please?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Two is better than one.
Sure, always. Here's another one. It's called Survival. I have an unrivaled capacity for self-destruction, but that being said, I can draw the phoenix from absolutely any fatality.
Can we please clap louder for Karuna?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
This
Thank
was
you.
really wonderful.
It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.